Today, we will examine the regulatory basis of environmental sustainability according to the European regulatory framework. We will break down the environmental objectives that form the foundation of any economic sustainability assessment. To determine if an economic activity can be considered environmentally sustainable, European regulations have established 6 fundamental objectives that we must analyze thoroughly. Let's begin with a general overview. The regulation states that to assess the sustainability of a specific economic activity, we need a comprehensive frame of reference. This framework includes 6 essential environmental objectives: climate change mitigation, climate change adaptation, sustainable use and protection of water and marine resources, transition to a circular economy, pollution prevention and control, and protection and restoration of biodiversity and ecosystems. Let's analyze each of these objectives in greater detail. Climate change mitigation. Regarding climate change mitigation, an economic activity must contribute significantly to stabilizing greenhouse gas emissions. This can be achieved by preventing them, reducing them, or improving their absorption. It is essential that such activity is consistent with the long-term temperature goal set out in the Paris Agreement. The interpretation of this objective must be carried out in accordance with the applicable regulations of the Union, including Directive 2009/31 of the European Parliament and of the Council. Climate change adaptation. With regard to climate change adaptation, an economic activity must contribute substantially to reducing or preventing adverse climate impacts, whether present or future, or the risks associated with these impacts. This requirement applies both to the activity itself and to the people, nature, or assets that may be affected. The interpretation of this objective must be aligned with current community regulations and with the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction 2015 to 2030. Sustainable use of water and marine resources. Regarding the sustainable use and protection of water and marine resources, this objective must be interpreted according to numerous community regulations, including Regulation (EU) 1308/2013 and multiple directives regulating aspects such as water policy, bathing water, groundwater, marine strategy, environmental quality standards, urban wastewater treatment, agricultural nitrates, and drinking water. Also relevant are several Commission communications on water scarcity, water resources, and pharmaceuticals in the environment. Transition to a circular economy. The transition to a circular economy constitutes the 4th objective, which must be interpreted in accordance with the extensive Union legislation on the circular economy, waste, and chemicals. This includes numerous regulations and directives on waste shipments, registration, evaluation and authorization of chemicals, persistent organic pollutants, packaging, end-of-life vehicles, batteries and accumulators, waste, industrial emissions, restriction of hazardous substances, waste electrical and electronic equipment, port reception facilities, and single-use plastic products, among others. An economic activity can contribute significantly to the circular economy in several ways. By increasing the durability, reparability, and reuse of products, reducing the use of resources through design and choice of materials, facilitating reconversion and disassembly in construction, developing product-as-a-service business models, reducing hazardous substances in materials and products, or reducing food waste in the production and distribution chain. Pollution, prevention and control. In relation to pollution prevention and control, this objective should be interpreted according to various community directives on water policy, environmental liability, air pollution, groundwater, air quality, environmental quality standards, industrial emissions, sulfur content of fuels, and national emission ceilings. Protection and restoration of biodiversity and ecosystems. Finally, the protection and restoration of biodiversity and ecosystems must be interpreted in accordance with the regulations and directives on the placing of wood on the market, genetic resources, invasive alien species, the conservation of wild birds, trade in wild fauna and flora, agricultural nitrates, and the conservation of natural habitats. Also relevant are various Commission communications on forest governance, biodiversity, green infrastructure, wildlife trafficking, and forest protection. An economic activity can contribute significantly to protecting and restoring biodiversity in multiple ways by improving ecosystem services. These services are classified into 4 categories: provisioning services such as food and water, regulating services such as climate and disease control, supporting services such as nutrient cycles and oxygen production, and cultural services, which offer spiritual and recreational benefits. This regulatory framework lays the foundation for comprehensively assessing the environmental sustainability of economic activities in the European Union, providing clear and specific criteria for each of the 6 fundamental environmental objectives. Focus your inquiries and challenge our AI Atenea complex questions, expert answers. More information at ilpabogados.com and ilpstartup.com.